And now for a taste of things to come.
A great slam and then some. It's on.
It's time for the new GameOn Podcast. We're celebrating our favorite games.
Falcon Punch!
Mamma mia!
Finish him!
It's a little bit of the old,
You're good, but I'm better.
a little bit of the new,
I am assuming direct control.
and everything in between.
But enough talk. How about you?
Let's get things started.
Get more from your gaming habit with Jeff Johnson.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
And it's the new GameOn Podcast with Jeff Johnson. I am Jeff Johnson, that's me. And we're here once again to talk about the subject that does not want to go away. It is the top 100 games I have ever played list. And holy cow, we've gone through a lot of games talking about this so far. And we're nearing the end of this thing. We are entering the top 40 with today's episode, and we're picking up where we left off. No honorable mentions to talk about this time. We're just getting right into it. For those who need reminding, basically I've gone through my entire gaming collection and put together a top 100 list. So having a look at all the games in my collection and deciding, yep, these are the ones that are the cream of the crop. And basically some quick notes about this list. If you want to view the full list, you can find out what we've seen so far on the JJ Plays Everything blog, or you can visit my GG app profile and find the top 100 list there, the entirety of that list, including the honorable mentions, and that is available to see. The link is in the description for this episode and available on our blog and in the YouTube description as well. Some other quick notes, games that I have not played are not on this list. So even though I own games like The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption 2, I have not got around to playing those yet. So I can't really say a game is the best I've ever played if I've never played it. Also, the list is ever changing. And so if a great game does come across my desk, or if I finally do get a chance to play The Last of Us, there are going to be changes to this list down the road. And also, we saw a few honorable mentions added to this list just recently. Last week, we added quite a few, actually. And replayability is a big factor in this list. If I'm willing to play a game over and over again, and have played a game multiple times, that factors into play, and that really tells me that this game is worth having on the list. So, without any more stalling for me, let's get to this next section of the list. We're starting with game number 40. We are only doing 20 games this week, just so that we can give these games a little bit more time to shine, and I don't have to rush like Speedy Gonzalez through the entire episode. I can just be regular Gonzalez for once. So, let's get into it. Number 40, Breath of Fire 2 for the SNES. Now, I've played quite a few Breath of Fire games over the years. Actually, I think I've played the entire series of it, aside for anything that came out on mobile. But Breath of Fire 2 stands out for me just as one of the best in this series. Mainly because it's one of those games that, I mean, if you look at Breath of Fire 1, it's a very classical style RPG. You look at this one, and there's a lot of sort of conveniences to this game that sort of modernize it compared to the other ones. Like, just looking at some of the battles that happen throughout the course of this game, there's one that I can remember plain as day where your monkey character gets into a fight with another monkey character on a bridge, and that bridge starts collapsing, and you're falling into a pit as you are fighting. And it's just like the cinematics that go into that. Even though it's an SNES game, it's incredible. It's amazing to see. Also, this game brings back some characters from the original Breath of Fire series. You actually get to have Blue, one of the sorcerer characters, as one of your main party members. It's a secret party member that you have to find by exploring the world map. Also, there's a world map, which is awesome. And there are many different ways to explore that world map, either through different transformations of characters, a moving, floating city that you get to take control of later in the game. And also, there's multiple endings to this game. There is so much going on with this game that it does well. And one other thing that I wanted to point out were the dragon transformations, which are a staple for all of the Breath of Fire games, but in this game, they're just sort of basically quick summon attacks. You use up all of your MP, do a quick summon attack, away you go. Another thing that really stands out about this game was just how frightening some of the moments of this game are, because it has this sort of cult storyline that goes to it. Like, the enemies of this game are cult members that are possessed by different demons, and they turn into demons as the game goes on, and you run into them throughout the course of the game and have to beat them when they go into their monster forms. And it's just that whole aspect of, like, you never know who's actually going to be a member of this cult, but given the fact that this is a Capcom Square Enix RPG, it's pretty much everybody who you run into who's a villain. So there's a lot of good to this game, and I would definitely recommend this if you are looking for an SNES classic RPG to play. Number 39, we're going to the N64 for this one. Also, spoiler alert, the 20 games we're talking about this week, there's only one that has been released within the last 10 years. So we're doing a retro dive mostly in this episode. Number 39 is Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber for the Nintendo 64. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're about to see just about every single Ogre Battle entry on this list. I love this series. Basically what you've got here is a strategy RPG combined with turn-based RPG gameplay. Basically, your job in this game is you run a army in a sort of fantasy setting. You build up your units. You got to manage all of your team members, and you go through and liberate towns with these different army units. And every battle they get into, build up these characters, level them up, and then you can, as they level up, change them into different classes. This game, what's unique about it is it's also got a different system where you can also use items that help towards building up different classes. And the other thing about it is, that I've always loved about the Ogre Battle series, is you can recruit neutral characters as well. While wandering around the map, you might run into some sort of a monster, some sort of a character who you can end up getting recruited into your team. Now, I know that the battles are pretty simplistic with this. Basically, as soon as the battle starts, your unit starts fighting on its own, and that's about that. But it is up to you to sort of place where those units are going to be for how many attacks they're going to get. And that alone does a great wonder to it. So, Ogre Battle 64 is here. Like I mentioned, you're going to see other Ogre Battle games in the list as well. The reason it is the lowest ranked Ogre Battle in my list is simply because of the fact that it's so darn long. I can say that I've played the other Ogre Battles over and over and over again. This game I've maybe played twice, which says a lot for it, though, because this is a cream of the crop RPG for the Nintendo 64. If you're able to find it in some way, or even able just to find like a ROM emulator of it, yeah, I know I shouldn't be supporting emulators, but whatever. It might be your only way to play this game, given the absurd price tag this game has. Unless you go on to like the Virtual Console eShops on like the Wii U, and I believe the Switch. No, the Switch doesn't have that. But the Wii U, you can actually download this game and play it. So it'd be worth your time if you wanted to go the legit way of doing it. Number 38 on the list, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I'm not talking about the new Resident Evil 3, although I have seen a lot of the footage for it and it looks fantastic. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis has a special place for me in just, violent horror video games. Just because Nemesis, what they did with the Nemesis character was unheard of at the time. Basically, anytime Nemesis would appear and you'd run away and try to get away, all of a sudden you'd have this guy chasing you down into another room, either by breaking through a wall or opening the door and following you or coming through a window. You had no idea where this guy was showing up, and it created so many big jump scares for me when I wasn't used to it. When I was used to it, it was just that exhilaration of having to try to beat this guy again and again and again. To me, this established Nemesis, because, what other games have we seen Nemesis aside from, like Operation Raccoon City or, Resident Evil, whatever gun game you got. But I mean, this game is what solidified Nemesis as a horror monster staple. Like, it reminds me of like a Jason or a Freddy or, you know, a Chucky or a Michael Myers. Like, this game did good with this character. The look is fantastic. He's a great villain. And yeah, I played again and again. There are people who complain about being short, but that's the whole point. That is the type of game it is. It is a quick action romp, and it's awesome. It is absolutely great. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I do want to recommend Resident Evil 3 for the modern systems if you can't get to the old PlayStation 1 version of Nemesis. But I mean, I've heard mixed things about it. There's a lot of people who complain about the short length of the new game. And, you know, it's a horror game. It's supposed to be short. So stop complaining. There's that. Also, I have heard mixed things about Nemesis transformations in the new game. And it sort of takes away from what Nemesis is. And from what I've seen from the videos, yeah, I get that sort of complaint. But I mean, hey, they had to do something new. I would prefer the old Nemesis monsters that came out, but to each their own. So yeah, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis takes the 38th spot on this list. Let's dive back to the Nintendo days here. Number 37, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. So, this game is based around the games that came out for the arcade, and those games are fantastic too, by the way. I'll say that much now. But TMNT 2, the arcade game, has a special place for me, because I can remember trying to beat this game as a little Jeffrey forever. Like, I can remember just trying to figure out just ways of getting through this game and just getting to the end of it by myself or with my brother at times. Honestly, I actually found it easier to do it by myself just because you could go through with the one character, like play as player one and beat through the whole thing. And then when you know you're on your last continue, plug the other controller in, and once you're on your last life on the other controller, just hit the start button and get player two going and just play through the rest of the game that way. And I mean, sometimes that helped, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes timing was off and you just screwed it up. Like, you thought you had more continues than you did, and you didn't. But this is a classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. There's TMNT 1 for the Nintendo, which, oh god, that's a rough game. It's great. I loved it as a kid, but it has definitely not stood the test of time. TMNT 2, though, is a game that you can pick up, and it's got that retro charm, and it still plays well to this day. There is a better TMNT retro game that we're going to be talking about later on, and you know which one we're talking about because everybody loves that game. But TMNT 2 arcade game, I can remember coming home for our school lunches and throwing that game on instead and playing it the whole time. I really liked this game growing up. Number 36 on the list. I mentioned we were going to see other Ogre Battle games. Well, here it is. Ogre Battle... Well, no, not Ogre Battle. Hang on. Tactics Ogre. Let Us Cling Together. Now, you can either go with the original PS1 version of this, or you can go with the redone PSP version of this. Both of them are fantastic. I'm going to go with the PSP version on this one, though, just because it really sort of cleans up some of the issues that were present with the PS1 version. And I've seen so many articles when they're talking about this game misquote this as like a Final Fantasy Tactics successor, like that this game was made because of Final Fantasy Tactics. No, the system of the strategy RPG, the turn-based strategy RPG that you've got here is very similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, but this game takes it in a different way. Because, I mean, you've got 10-person parties, which is absolutely insane to manage, and honestly, it can slow things down, I will say that much, but once you get into that system, once you get into the sort of mentality of how that works, it works out really well. Plus, there's a gigantic branching story in this game. Like, the choices that you make at the end of each chapter sends the game off in a different direction, and it just keeps doing that at the end of each chapter, depending on which path you went down, and there is so many possible endings. There are so many different ways that you can get characters to join you through this. It is it's so good. It's very addicting, especially if you love turn-based RPGs, because I'm definitely somebody who is addicted to that style of game. And there is one area of this game that I got really fed up with the first time I went through it, but I realized that it was a way to get a bunch of secret stuff as well. The deep dungeon, like the biggest dungeon in the game. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but basically if I'm right, it's an 100-floor dungeon that you can go through to get different items, get different character classes. You can go through it to get basically some special items towards the bottom. It sort of wraps up the main storyline with one of the main villains down there. Holy cow. I can't even believe that we had to go through that big of a dungeon. It might have been 50 floors, though. So I could be wrong on that, but nostalgia does a number to me sometimes. It's either 50 floors or 100 floors. It's really big. That's the best way to put it. And Tactics Ogre, it's a great game. I've done videos of it on side channels before. I really enjoy this game, and I really enjoyed the fact that they came out with a redone version of it for PSP where they cleaned up the wording, they cleaned up the dialogue. They've also made it that you don't have to basically have multiple save files to go through all those different routes. Once you finish one route, you can sort of go back in time to a different point in the branching story and just pick up from there. So it is the definitive version of this game. Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together for PSP. It's one of the best games I've ever played. Next on the list, number 35, we're sticking with the PSP. Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. This is the first game in the Danganronpa series, and this got me addicted to the whole thing. The first time I picked it up, I didn't have time for it, and I put it back down. And much the story of many of the games in my collection, it stayed there for a while. 1 year later, I decided, yeah, you know what? I really got to give this game a go. I've heard so much about it. I want to try it. And every good word you hear about this game is spot on the money. This is basically a visual I mentioned this with Danganronpa 2 last time. This is a visual novel game where a class of students is trapped inside of a school, and basically the whole objective of this game from the villain's point of view is for one of those students to kill one of the other students and get away with it. And if they get away with it, the rest of the class dies and they get let go. Like they get to get out of this prison. Whereas your job as one of the students who is not murdering the other students is to find out who did it and prove it in court. So basically you're gathering evidence from crime scenes and you're going through the whole story with this. For me, this game is a storytelling masterpiece. It is fantastically done. And there were many days, many nights where I could not put this game down and I just kept on playing. And it kind of led into a couple of situations where I'd keep on playing it and then realize, oh, I've stayed up all night and I've got to go to work. Oh boy. Those were fun mornings. But yeah, Danganronpa. This game is worth your time if you're looking for a good story. And I will warn you now, there is a lot of sort of anime tropes in it. It's heavily influenced by anime. In fact, there's a couple of anime series that have spawned from this game. But it's definitely worth your time. It's great. Number 34 on the list, we are going into the Mario block of this list because there's a lot of good Mario games to talk about. Number 34, Mario Party for the N64. And to me, this is one of the best Mario Party games in the series. There's a lot of them to choose from, but this one stands out. There's just that right balance of the number of different boards that you can go to, the number of different boards that you can play in this game. Also, there is a great one-player mode in this game where you got to go through all the different mini games and make it to the end to fight that cheater Toad on that stupid slot car derby one, which I hated so much. But there is a lot of good to this game. I can remember playing this with many different people over the years, and it's Mario Party. Like, Mario Party is basically the prime example of how to do a game with a franchise of characters and turn it into a board game. It's been copied many times since. I mean, I know there's like Pac-Man Party. There was Amiibo Festival for Animal Crossing, which was a terrible game. Also, if I'm right, the Sonic Cast has their own version of this as well. But nothing can stand the test of time with Mario Party. And this is also a game that kind of had some cheap things in it too, which I love because it sets up so many burn moments in these games. Like the fact that you can go to like Chance Time and swap the stars with your other characters, which if you've got a ton of stars and your opponent has none and they pull that off on you, you get so mad. It's maddening when that happens. It's very rare, but it is super maddening when it does happen. And of course, you know, there was the options to steal stars with the booze, and yeah, it's a great game. It is a great party game. The closest I've seen them get to it with a game like this is Mario Party 2, which also for the N64, it's really well done. Mario Party 8 for the Wii is exceptional. It's another good game in that series. And Super Mario Party for the Switch has been a real return to form for the series. I actually talked about that in my best games I played in 2018 list. Super Mario Party is extremely good. But it's Super Mario, like Mario Party for the N64 is by far the best one in that series. Number 33, Mario Kart 64. I love Mario Kart. I love every game in the Mario Kart series. Except for the Game Boy Advance one. That one kind of stunk a bit. But, every game in the Mario Kart series is phenomenally done. This is the ones that basically gave us the idea of putting your characters in a go-kart and letting them go. And Mario Kart 64, without a doubt, stands the test of time. It's very easy to access, so little Jeffrey loved it. It's very hard to master, so older Jeffrey likes that. And it's great for the entire family. Plus, this has the best battle mode in all the Mario Kart games. Mario Kart 64's battle mode is fantastic. Between like the block building one or the sort of donut level with the lava in the middle, like these are fantastic levels for any sort of battle. And I can remember playing these with my cousins, playing this with my brother, and just going to town, into battles with this. It is so good. Mario Kart 64 is worth it. And it's one of those reasons you want to keep an N64. Speaking of which, let's go into number 32, Super Mario 64. We've had a block of N64 games here, and all of them Mario. And Mario 64, you know why. Because Mario 64 is the game. It is, without a doubt, the game that defined platforming in the 3D generation of games. This is the game that was basically the codifier for platform games for a generation. And it's a great game too. Even nowadays, if you go back to it, it is still worth playing, especially when they re-released it for Mario 64 DS. That game was done well because it came from a firm start. Mario 64. And I mean, the whole idea of going through the different paintings, collecting 120 stars all together, the Bowser boss fights were, for a kid, intense. But it was the first time you saw Bowser on such a scale. And it's from there that we saw many of these different games. Like I talked about Mario Galaxy in an earlier episode talking about this list. But Mario Galaxy would not be what it is without Mario 64. And Mario 64 is a game to this day that I can pick up and lose hours just playing it. So yeah, Mario 64. I shouldn't have to explain this one, but it is so worth it, and it is a fantastic game on the list. All right, number 31, Front Mission 3 for the PlayStation. This is the last one for this segment. Front Mission 3 is a hard one it's not a hard one to explain, because many people have heard of it. Many people haven't heard of it. Some people have. Basically, what you've got here is a mech turn-based RPG. So, right off the bat, you've checked off my whole love of mecha. you've checked off my turn-based RPG one, and also it's a game with multiple endings. That being said, to get those multiple endings, it's the tiniest little choice at the very beginning of the game that causes that. So it's not like as crazy of a branching story as what we saw in Tactics Ogre, but there is a branching story, and it's a completely different story for both of those storylines. There's a huge, absolutely huge variety of different parts that you can use for your different mechas. Each one of those teaching a different move for your character, and then those moves will carry on to whatever you build next for your mecha types. And like the variety, the absolute variety for this is insane. It's absolutely insane just how much variety there is for this one. So if you're looking for a turn-based strategy game, Front Mission 3 is absolutely fantastic. There's even a secret in this game where you can actually get one of the extremely strong final armors in the game by going to the internet. And like there's an in-game internet for you to actually find this thing. It's very complicated, but the first time I actually made that happen, that suit was incredible. Like just firing like laser beams at people and just ripping them apart. It was totally worth it. I remember just the effort that went into getting that suit, and then the payout of actually using it was completely worth it. So yeah, Front Mission 3, PlayStation. I will say right now though, there hasn't been another Front Mission that lives up to this game. Front Mission 4 was okay at best. Front Mission Evolved for Xbox 360. The less we talk about that, the better. And then there was another game that came out recently that took the Front Mission universe and combined it with sort of a Metal Gear Solid like stealth style. Yeah, don't talk about that game. It is not worth your time. I don't even remember the name of it, but it's not worth your time. All right, so that's 10 games we've gone through on this list. When we come back, we will be going through the next section of our list as we count down to number 20. I'm Jeff Johnson. This is the new GameOn Podcast.
You know what they say, when life hands you lemons,
Do a barrel roll.
and when you want to know about your favorite games, listen to Game On with Jeff Johnson.
Hey, this is Duke Nukem. When I'm not out saving the universe from mutant panty wastes, I'm listening to Game On.
The new GameOn Podcast continues. Here's Jeff.
And it's the new GameOn Podcast. I am Jeff Johnson, and we are entering into the second half of the games we're talking about in this week's episode. We're still going through the top 100 games I've ever played list. This is part 3 of that series. If you missed the first 2 parts of that podcast, you will find them on Spreaker, on JJ Plays Everything, and on youtube.com/GameOnGNT. So if you go to any of those places, you'll find them there. If you want to see the full list in its entirety, you can check out the GG app link that I have in this description for this episode, and just follow that. You'll see the top 100 list as well as the honorable mentions. So they're all there. They're all available to be seen. Let's go into game number 30. We're going into the final 10 games we're talking about in this episode. Game number 30 is kind of tricky to classify as a game. It's RPG Maker for the PlayStation 1. Now, I'm sure you could throw any number of different RPG Maker softwares in here. For me, RPG Maker, my favorite experience with this game was for the PlayStation 1. I ended up picking this game up as a rental from Blockbuster, and eventually convinced Blockbuster to sell it to me because there was no way they were going to get this game back. I absolutely loved the idea of being able to put one of the stories I've written and turn it into a classical SNES level graphics RPG. My biggest sort of downfall with this game was the fact that it took so much space to actually make one of those games, and how little the space was that was available for PlayStation 1 memory cards. but I can remember trying to sort of script out different stories that I'd make over the years. Like, there was this story I made called Irish Hospitality, and it turned into basically a 4-hour RPG on this thing. I also tried to do the New World series, which that's something I would love to sort of bring for people to see, and I would love to get written out as well. And it got its start through RPG Maker. And now you might think to yourself, well, this is more of a software, isn't it? Well, no, because it's an RPG. It is something that I spent my time sort of playing around with. And I actually ended up dedicating, oh God, that save file reached about 600 hours of time spent on this game. 600 hours that got dumped into RPG Maker. And I have never had as easy a user interface as I did with the PlayStation 1 version of this game. Which is why it was so disappointing for me to pick up RPG Maker 2 for the PS2 and then just fumble around with that and never get that creative spark that I had with the first RPG Maker. And then I've even picked up some of the newer ones, like for Steam or like, on the PC. Like I have RPG Maker MV on my computer right now, and I just never got into it as well as I did with the original RPG Maker for PlayStation. It's fantastic. It is an absolute keeper, an absolute gem of a software. It's worth it. I wouldn't say revisit it now, because, let's face it, trying to find one that actually works nowadays would be tough, and I've never seen it actually be made available on any of the download services as well. Actually, I also downloaded RPG Maker 3 for the PS2 through the PS Store, like the PlayStation Store, and that one I didn't really catch with either. But yeah, RPG Maker 1 was definitely worth it. Number 29 on this list, Pokemon Soul Silver. I actually, I think I beat this game 5 times. I played through beginning to end. This was right in the sort of height of my interest of coming back to the Pokemon series. I had started playing Pokemon Diamond shortly after meeting my then girlfriend, now wife, Shayla, at the time. And I had borrowed Pokemon Diamond from her and absolutely dumped endless amount of time into that game. And then Pokemon Soul Silver came out, and it had like the Pokewalker with it, and you could transfer any Pokemon you wanted from Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, or any of the other games into it. And with that, I basically would just go, okay, well, why don't I dump 6 level 1 Pokemon of my choice, of any of the Pokemon, into the game, and just run through the whole game with them. And I did that over and over again. Like, just these 6 Pokemon are the ones that I'd use. I'd occasionally make an HM slave because some of them couldn't use the HMs, but these would be the ones I'd run through the entire game with, and I had a blast with it. Like, the fact that I got myself a level 100 Glaceon out of this, or the one time I just had a team that had Arcanine and a bunch of other guys. I can't remember the other guys because Arcanine is the one that I used all the time. And yeah, like, the thing about it is, Soul Silver was probably one of the best remakes of a game of its time. We've seen fantastic remakes since then. But for them to take Silver and Gold, up the graphic level to current level Pokemon style, and then also have the ability for the Pokemon to follow you, include in all the new Pokemon from later generations, it's just incredible. Plus the Pokewalker thing, like, for myself, the Pokewalker was absolutely addicting because, like, I just dump a Pokemon in there and then go for a walk around my neighborhood, which really encourages the whole Pokemon Go thing. Actually, I just realized Pokemon Go isn't on this list. Wonder where I'd put that. Anyway, Pokemon Soul Silver, fantastic game. I cannot stress enough, this is one of the best Pokemon games that came out at that time. We're going to see another Pokemon game come up on this list later on for sure, but this game was fantastic. Number 28, one of my favorite classic Mega Man games, Mega Man 2 for the Nintendo. I've come back to this game many times, and I get the same joy out of it every single time. I've downloaded this game now. I think I've got the physical copy of this on my Nintendo, but I've also got it for the Mega Man Legacy Collection. I've also got the Mega Man Collection for GameCube. It's also downloaded onto my Nintendo 3DS, because I downloaded all the Mega Man games onto there as well. I've picked up this game numerous times, and many of the Mega Man games numerous times, because they're timeless. The Mega Man games are almost perfection for that whole platforming robot action. Like, there is nobody has done Mega Man like Mega Man. And Mega Man 2 is Mega Man at its best. I also liked, I had mentioned earlier about Mega Man 3 on the list. Like, Mega Man 3 is a fantastic game as well. And Mega Man 5 didn't make the list, but it's also a really good one in the old classic series. But Mega Man 2, it just has that spark. Like, it has that thing that just keeps you coming back. And another reason Mega Man 2 kind of stands out for me is just the fact that I can remember doing that drunken gaming Mega Man run with this thing. And the Quickman stage killing me endlessly. As well as some of the bosses in the Wily Castle killing me endlessly. And me ending up hungover the next day because of this stupid great game. That's a series I gotta put back up on the channel at some point. But Mega Man 2 it's perfect. It is the perfect Mega Man game. So, definitely worth picking up. Classic Mega Man Gold. Number 27, Star Ocean, the second story. I just realized I've spent a lot of time talking about many of these games, but I am going to have to speed up a little bit here because we're getting towards the end of our time here. Number 27, Star Ocean, the second story. Star Ocean plays a lot like the Tales of series, just, having that sort of, like, there's the overworld map that you can wander into, and then as you get into fights, it's a action RPG setup where you basically move your characters around and do your special moves through trigger buttons and then your regular attacks. This game introduced me to that system, and it has so much customization, so much sort of private actions with the other characters to sort of build camaraderie between them. And from what I understand, it has a ridiculous amount of endings. But with the amount of time I dumped into just a single playthrough of this game, I never ever went for those other endings because I wasn't going to do it. It is ridiculously big. 2 whole worlds to explore. It's gold. This is RPG gold. And I remember loving this game, and I've gone back to it a couple of times and really enjoyed playing it still to this day. Number 26, we've got another RPG gem from the Super Nintendo. It's Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. It's Mario combined with Square Enix, and it introduced Geno. You've heard of Mario RPG. This game is certainly worth your time. I've never seen a Mario game like this until this happened. And I mean, later on in the years that came, we ended up getting the Paper Mario series and the Mario and Luigi series, both of which are RPG series, but they just don't do it compared to this. Mario RPG basically took what Square Enix did, and they ran with it with the Mario characters. Plus, it's the first time you ever get to have Mario and Bowser in a party together, which, that's incredible. Number 25. This is probably everybody's favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. I'm talking about Turtles in Time. For me, the Super Nintendo edition is the best version of this game, but I can remember playing it in arcades as well back in the day when it first came out, and I remember telling myself, I really want to play this game when it comes out to systems. And, well, it came out to systems, and we got it, and we played it over and over again. And the interesting thing about it is, I remember when I first got my recording set up to be able to record retro games and to record modern games when we were just starting GameOn. And I remember working with my brother and being like, okay, well, let's give a test recording run. The first thing we popped in was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 because it stands the test of time. You want a quick running game, you want something you're gonna enjoy every time you play it. This is it. Great for multiplayer, great for playing with anybody. Anybody can get into this game. Number 24 on the list, I mentioned about classic Mega Man, with Mega Man 2 being the best. This one is the Mega Man X series. In fact, we're going with Mega Man X for Super Nintendo. This game's flawless. I really got into Mega Man when I was a kid. In fact, I had a couple of friends that I used to draw different Mega Man robots with. And yeah, I know that sounds super nerdy, but we were super into these games. And Mega Man X is a big part of the reason why. Because, like, I remember seeing the Nintendo Power with Mega Man X on the cover and, you know, just seeing they've taken it up and pumped everything up that Mega Man does to a whole nother level. And it's fantastic. This game, to this day, is absolutely perfect. You can play it at any time, and it doesn't feel sluggish at all. This is worth it. This game, you need to play this game if you haven't played it. Number 23 on the list, we got 3 more to talk about today, and it's all RPGs from here on out. Number 23, Final Fantasy VI. This is, without a doubt, one of the best Final Fantasy games. There's 2 more Final Fantasy games that are appearing on this list, though, so I don't want to go too much into this. Gigantic cast of characters, great story throughout the entirety of this game. I also like the sort of branching paths that happened at a couple of different points in this game, plus the fact that you had to regather your characters when the world got completely ruined halfway through. So, yes, Final Fantasy VI, one of the best Final Fantasies in the entire series. Number 22, this is the only newer game on this list, Undertale. So, Undertale left a huge impression on me. It's a great RPG. The gameplay mechanics are not really done in, like, you know, the whole idea of instead of attacking your opponents, you want to avoid all of the attacks that they bring onto you and sort of, I guess, puzzle solve all the different encounters that you have with the different bosses and enemies along the way. Or you could just genocide run it, but I could never bring myself to do that. And also, it just had this creepy factor to it. And also had this sort of, I wouldn't say like an urban legend feel to it, but like you would always hear about like, oh, well, there's this hidden in this area that you can only get by having this certain value. Or, oh, well, there are multiple different ways that you can beat the game. And then there's multiple different items that you can find throughout the course of this game. It's amazing. And the other thing about it is, since beating this game, I have gone back to this soundtrack multiple times because the music is really, really well done. Like, for like the style of sort of chiptune music that is there, it is very good, very great. And the fact that it's an indie project and it has stood up to me like this, it's worth it. It is definitely worth your time. And the last one on this list for today, number 21, we are looking at Suikoden 2 for the PlayStation 1. Suikoden is a game that basically you can play through for like the full length of the game, like 40, 50 hours. And like, there's so much that you'll do. You could probably play with a different party every time you play it because there's 108 characters that you can recruit. Plus the other thing is there's a way to play through this game where you can get, basically there is this challenge to beat it in under 20 hours, which I did. And I can't believe I forced myself to do it again. But it wasn't really forcing it because this game is that good. It is a very good game. So, yeah, Suikoden 2 is the best in the Suikoden series. I was super disappointed with Suikoden 3, but I'm going to have to touch on that in another episode at some point. I'm just going to focus on the good that is Suikoden 2 right now because the characters are great. The twists and turns of the story are good. We talk about Final Fantasy VII having the surprise death of Aerith in there. This game also has a couple of surprise deaths as well, depending on how you play it. So there is a lot of good to this story and great villains as well. The villains stand up to the test of time. You will hate these villains that are in there. Luca Blight especially. Okay, so next time we come back, we are going to go through the final 20 games of the top 100 games list. I am Jeff Johnson. You are listening to the new GameOn Podcast. Thank you for joining us. And you've been listening to the new GameOn Podcast with Jeff Johnson. You can find more content from Game On Facebook and on youtube.com/GameOnGNT. And don't forget to check us out on Spreaker for all of your podcast needs. And remember, if you didn't like the 40 hours you spent playing an RPG, you can always spend 600 hours making one yourself.